President-elect Barack Obama says he wants to shut down the military prison at Guantanamo Bay. But for now, suspects are still being tried there. 9/11 co-conspirator Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is due in a courtroom next week. Tonight, in a BBC exclusive, one of the military lawyers assigned to prosecute Guantanamo prisoners speaks out against the legal process there. Army Lieutenant Colonel Darrell Vanderveld quit his job this summer after a crisis of conscience. And he has now told his story to the BBC's security correspondent, Gordon Carrera.
I'd never suffered such anguish in my life about anything. So I'm here to tell the truth about Guantanamo and about how it involves a few people who have sullied America's military and have sullied our Constitution.
Erie, Pennsylvania, an old industrial town in the heart of the Rust Belt, a place that for generations has bred America's soldiers.
Faith and patriotism have deep roots in this community, but for one man from here, the journey to Guantanamo Bay has forced him to rethink what it means to be a soldier and a believer.
Lieutenant Colonel Darrell Vanderveld heard the call of duty after 9/11. An Army reservist, he was called up to active service and spent the following years serving with distinction as a military lawyer in Iraq, Africa and Bosnia.
Every evaluation that I received was stellar by military standards. I did everything asked of me and more. I saw it as facilitating the global war on terror.
Seen as a loyal soldier, Vanderveld was assigned in 2007 to work as a prosecutor at Guantanamo Bay, where military commissions had just begun, the controversial system under which terrorist suspects were put on trial.
I went down there on a mission, and my mission was to convict as many of these detainees as possible and to put them in prison for as long as I possibly could.
You had no doubts they were bad men?
I had zero doubt. I was a true believer.
But for the true believer, it was not long before doubts emerged. Vanderveld's first case was that of Mohammed Jawad, a teenager arrested in Afghanistan, accused of a grenade attack on a US military vehicle. Vanderveld found that vital evidence that could help in Jawad's defense was being withheld from his lawyers.
This evidence was located in a locker, and I can't say that anybody deliberately hid this evidence in a locker, but they were logs of his treatment at Guantanamo. And this evidence locker was locked by a combination lock that was rusty, obviously hadn't been opened in years, and I was very curious to know what was inside.
And what was inside?
Inside was indisputable evidence that Mr. Jawad had been mistreated almost from the moment that he arrived at Guantanamo. Mr. Jawad had attempted to commit suicide in the worst imaginable way, by banging his head against his cell wall. He had nothing to hang himself with, because if he had, I'm sure he would have.
According to Vanderveld, interrogators at Guantanamo decided to take advantage of Jawad's vulnerability to gain a confession, using sleep deprivation, constantly moving him from cell to cell.
After the suicide attempt, and after Mr. Jawad had been interviewed, during which he cried incessantly and begged for his mother, that this would be a good time to use techniques like what we called fear up, to bring in fear, to try to impress upon him that unless he cooperated, he would never leave Guantanamo.
Darrell Vanderveld is a devout Catholic, and reconciling his faith with what he was being asked to do for his country became increasingly difficult. But because his work was so secret, he couldn't even tell his wife about his growing dilemma.
It was the most anguished period in my life. Maybe I was betraying my nation.
So Van der Velde took the unusual step of emailing a Jesuit priest active within the peace movement for advice.
I'm beginning to have grave misgivings about what I'm doing and what we're doing as a country. I no longer want to participate in the system, but I lack the courage to quit. Please pray that I find the moral courage to pick up my cross and follow Jesus.
Well, I sort of didn't believe it, but I just on the off chance that he might really be a military prosecutor at Guantanamo, I wrote back, "Dear Daryl, thanks for writing. Quit. If you're going to follow Jesus, you have to quit. God bless you. All the best." That's what I wrote.
I expected him to say, do the best you can within your ethical and moral sense, but finish the mission. And so when he said, very simply, quit, my jaw dropped.
Did you think that would be it?
Oh, I never thought I'd hear from him, no. And, gosh, very shortly afterwards, he wrote me that, indeed he had quit.
Why did it take you so long to realize the process was flawed?
I knew what was happening at Guantanamo. It took me too long to recognize that we had abandoned our American values and we had defiled our Constitution.
What would you say to people who were critical and say you just jumped ship when you could see the Guantanamo process falling apart and perhaps a new president coming in who was going to close it anyway?
I didn't do it for any political reason. I didn't do it because I thought it would further my career. In fact, it's had the opposite effect. But I remain convinced today that I did the right thing and I did the moral thing. And I didn't do it out of expediency. I did it out of conviction.
Today is Van der Velde's first day out of uniform after leaving the military yesterday. His resignation struck at the heart of the military commission process.
Daryl Van der Velde's crisis of conscience led to his resignation and an early return to his hometown. But it's also raised deeper questions about how America is going to deal with the men it's detained in its so-called war on terror.
President-elect Obama has said he wants to shut down the detention facility, a view echoed on the streets of Erie.
I think after the World Trade Centers were attacked, the country had to go to extreme measures, and those have dissipated, and we can't look back. We just have to close it.
If legally, according to our legal system, they don't have grounds to detain them any longer, then I do believe that people should be released.
But working out what to do with some of the more dangerous detainees is not easy. However, Daryl Van der Velde believes they could be tried in the US.
No justice will be obtained at Guantanamo. And if that entails moving them temporarily to the United States or for trial, so be it.
Daryl Van der Velde's military career is over, but he believes that by resigning and speaking out, he's staying true to his beliefs.
My own personal journey, I'm not sure I still understand it. I'm still trying to come to terms with it. It must have some meaning. I like to think that I made some contribution. But I think at the end of my career and at the end of my life, when you look back on it, somebody will say, he was a soldier.
One man's struggle with his conscience in the morally and legally ambiguous world of Guantanamo Bay. Gordon Carrera reporting for us there. And in response to Daryl Van der Velde's claims, a Pentagon spokesman told the BBC, "We dispute Van der Velde's assertions and maintain the military commission process provides full and fair trials to accused unlawful enemy combatants who are charged with a variety of war crimes." That from the Pentagon.
If this were a dictatorship, it'd be a heck of a lot easier. Just so long as I'm the dictator.